Have you ever wondered how rocks, academics, and Wyoming come together? Well, please, if you are interested, come join me for the GHC Faculty Lounge, in which I talk about these very things with Professor Billy Morris. Welcome to the GHC Faculty Lounge. I'm Trevise Baldwin-Obas. Today I'm privileged to have Professor Billy Morris, who is a professor of geology, with us. Welcome, Billy.
Thank you, Trevise.
How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Good. So we're about 2 weeks out from graduation.
Yes.
Our students are hurried. They have finals, papers. How are you feeling?
I feel great. At this time of the year, my work is basically done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, you get to do some exciting things over the summer, though.
Yes, ma'am.
And we'll get to that. But I do want the audience to hear a little bit about your backstory. So tell us a little bit about how you got to Georgia Highlands.
Be happy to. It goes back a ways. I think you have heard me speak of this before, but my dad was an original employee of the college in charge of auxiliary and services, bookstore and cafeteria. And so I got to see him work in the original building, the old Harbin Clinic, off of behind Broad Street during the first year, and then move into the Floyd campus after construction. My mom was a college professor at the time as well, and so I was raised in an academic environment essentially, and spent a lot of time on both the Shorter College campus and the Georgia Highlands campus, but I never attended Georgia Highlands as a student. So fast forward a whole bunch of years. I started my career at age 39 at Georgia Highlands College. Prior to that, I'd done several other things, but I noticed that, David Cook, professor of biology and chair of the science department at the time, called me and asked me if I would fill in for a physical science course over the summer. The physicist had just retired. So I agreed, and I taught physical science for a summer, and then saw that a geology course was actually in the catalog but had never been taught because we didn't have geology. Right. So David Cook hired me to teach that geology course, and then his successor, Dr. Judy Perdue, hired me as a full-time instructor, basically to travel. We were just starting our satellite campus program at that time, and rocks and maps are easy to carry for a lab science course and not very expensive either. So that's really how I began my career at Georgia Highlands, is have rocks will travel.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you built it up from scratch. And obviously, too, your prowess is actually the course that you teach during the summer. Talk to us a little bit about that trip in Wyoming.
Sure. I attended a image processing conference and met someone from Casper, Wyoming. We became good friends and agreed to swap field courses. Well, she never made it to Georgia with her course, but I made it to Wyoming with my course, and she led us for the first couple of years and showed me many locations that I would never have known about otherwise. So I owe a lot to her for helping us establish.
And how many years now?
Well, if you don't count the COVID years, this, when we can't count them because we didn't go, this would have been the 27th year, but this will actually be the 25th year of actually taking students.
And talk to us a little bit about how that course is structured.
Sure. My objective was to meet all of the learning goals for the course, and so with geology I needed to go to a location that had a wide variety, and Wyoming was the perfect solution for that. Yeah. So they have rocks of all ages over the geologic time scale, and they have examples of volcanism, glaciation, stream processes, earthquake activity, the hydrothermal features at Yellowstone, of course, and then plus fossils of all kinds, mammal fossils, dinosaur fossils. So we could meet nearly every single one of the learning objectives that is in the face-to-face physical geology and historical geology course in Wyoming. And it was then a question of, how am I going to build this program so that we can, that it makes sense. And it's still a little bit non-linear in that we don't follow, say, the typical progression that you would find in a textbook, but that's fine. From historical geology tells the story of the Earth from old to young, and so I try to structure my trip much in that way, where we're looking at some of the oldest rocks on the continent first, and then making our way up through the geologic timescale.
And that does cover 2 of their required sciences, correct?
It does. It does. 8-hour science credit. We've done made some significant changes this year I have a colleague, Brandy Rogers, Professor Brandy Rogers, who is teaching an ecology course this summer. And we have also added a walking course, a PE course, 2 hours credit. And then we have another geology professor, Kathy Smart, who's going on to teach a Area B course on dinosaurs with us this year. So it's possible for students to earn 12 hours of credit.
Wonderful. And are we full to capacity with the trip
yet? We are 23 out of 24. We also doubled the size of the trip, and we added a week of the trip this year to give us enough time to cover the.
That's just an amazing experience for our students, you know, many of which, as you know, don't travel often, particularly outside of the state, much less to a different state, but also get the opportunity to earn college credit. And we thank you so much for bringing that program to the table. So in addition to that, what are some of your favorite things about getting to do this job?
Oh, man. You know, I was speaking about this with a colleague just recently. We have a platform that is not available to a lot of other people in their profession. And that platform allows us to do a lot of good, honestly, hopefully, and expose our students to things, both physical things and ideas and methods that they might not otherwise come in contact with. And most of the time we have the flexibility to change our delivery and experiment with new methods. I know that in our School of STEM, our leadership is very supportive of us trying new things, and that brings me a great amount of pleasure and satisfaction to be able to have that flexibility and freedom, and then see the response that the students give us and what it means to them.
How do you approach the student that says, Professor, I'm not a science person, I'm not a rock person? How do you get them to enjoy the aspects of your course?
You know, that doesn't happen often, but occasionally it does. And what I found in the more recent years, the last 5 or 8 years maybe, is that our students don't spend as much time outside as they did 20 years ago. And so they would rather be inside doing something. And I read a very interesting article recently about how to recruit geoscience majors. It basically said, you've been doing it wrong all along. It's not about climbing the mountains and wading in the creeks and getting your hands dirty. It's about, if you want to attract today's students into geosciences, you need to appeal to their sense of altruism. You can help people, you can help the planet, and they saw documented increases in their geoscience pathway enrollment after they changed their marketing strategy.
Just actually innovating, right?
So you know, I don't. On the one hand, that was shocking and a little bit disappointing to be told that you need to. What brought me into this discipline is not necessarily what's going to bring other people. So, when students express an interest of not being sciencey, I mean, they're probably in the best. If not going to be a science major, but they have to take a science. Geology is a great one. It impacts our lives in so many ways, and I try to point that out too. You know, it's not just about naming a rock or a mineral or a fossil. You know, if you didn't grow. If you didn't grow it or manufacture it, it's been mined somewhere. Everything that we use is a product of.
So you're actually encouraging them to understand beyond what would be found in a textbook. How does it impact you today and the products and the things that you utilize? So you mentioned that being one of the challenges you face in the discipline is figuring out how to connect with those students. Overall, in your almost now 30-year teaching career, how much has the student shifted as far as their ability to learn and process information?
Whoa, what a question. Boy, you have to be quick these days with students. Their attention span is not what it used to be. Right. So I remember, and it wasn't that long ago, when I did not tolerate a phone in my classroom. Right. And it took me far too long to realize that was a losing battle and I would never win it. So I flipped the switch on that, and now we use the phones and we look up the things. And when they ask a question or during the lecture, you know, well, y'all look this up and let's talk about it. So it's worked out a lot better. Now, sometimes it's difficult to keep, when there's a concept that needs to be explored in depth, it's sometimes difficult to keep folks on track to do that. The other thing that I see, and I'm not sure if this is a function of not being involved in so many evening classes like we used to do. But when we had evening classes, there were many non-traditional students who brought life experiences to the classroom.
Absolutely.
And that was a whole different dynamic in the classroom at that point. So those students are online now, I guess, and we don't interact with them in those kinds of ways that we used to. So the students that I see face to face now are younger. They're more traditional students, and their world moves very
quickly. Yes, I concur with you about the telephone usage. I was the same, and very quickly figured out a way to incorporate that technology into the classroom. I found that once I had them give a speech in which they got to use their phones and do it in class, they appreciated that. Thought I was a cool teacher at that point. So I appreciate you sharing that. So in addition to some of the other things that you do, including this geology trip, you are very active on campus and then the campus culture. What are some of your favorite things to do with our students on campus?
Well, I have taught an environmental science class recently, and again, my leadership allowed me to toss out the cookbook lab manual and develop some course-based undergraduate research projects. And so I divide, and again, these were non-science majors. These were students taking a science course for elective credit. But we spent some time talking about things that they were interested in, and I asked them to develop a research project based on campus, hopefully, around air quality, soil quality, water quality, any plants or animals that we had on campus. And we spent maybe the first few weeks talking about what that research project would look like, and then we got the tools to answer the questions that they want answered, and then turn them loose. And so they had some checkpoints along the way. They would have to report results and then analyze and interpret their results and come up with a conclusion. And then we had a poster session at the end of the semester, which was great. Yeah, and so now we're doing so much more with that. Julius in the library has got our academic showcase wide open, and so many folks are doing that now. But that has been a lot of fun to work with non-science majors and show them how, instead of reading about science, actually doing the science. I've really enjoyed that.
And I love the aspect too that in addition to having that under their belt, you also have to be able to convey that information.
The communication.
So that the communication, the delivery of that information as well. So that's fantastic, and I hope we continue to see more of your students' work on display. I want to transition a little bit and talk to you about some of the things that we're seeing across our local community. There have been a lot of efforts to ensure that the graduates from Georgia Highlands College stay, live, work, and play in our community. So how would you say that Georgia Highlands has been able to infiltrate that? Are we able to do that well? Do you have any of your former students that you run across in the community?
You know, Travis, the last 2 years has kept us in our own space so much that I can't honestly say that I'm plugged into the information to answer your question. Looking back pre-2020, I did often run into former students. My wife is very much accustomed to being with me somewhere out in the public and then having somebody come over and start up a conversation. That's a former student, right? Which is great. You know, I love running into them and even their children now and having some of the children of former students.
That means we're getting old, Billy.
Well, I can't be denied. Can't be denied.
I love that. Well, I do think GHC definitely, in recent years, has definitely pushed for that, and I hope to see a return on that investment. It's wonderful to see and hear that we got our start at GHC, but yet they're also still contributing to the communities in which we serve.
Yes, I agree completely, and I think it is happening. You know, I'm from the Rome and Floyd County area. It's a very different scene over in Cartersville and Bartow and the Marietta Cobb. And I've been teaching on the Cartersville campus this semester, and just to watch, kind of observe the differences in the students and where they come from and what they bring to the classroom is quite interesting. I'll always be a Floyd County Rome boy.
That's your
I
heart,
love, I love my Model, my Armurchie, my Pepperell, my Tryon, my Chattooga, my Cedartown people, because they're the people that same kind of people that I grew up with. So I do, again, pre-20, pre-COVID, I ran into them a lot in the community, and I think they all universally have a great message about GHC.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, we have so much more to discuss with Professor Morris, so please come back and join us after the break.
The most affordable bachelor's degree in Northwest Georgia is right here at Georgia Highlands College. High quality and career focused. That's what you can expect at GHC. Apply today at highlands.edu.
Welcome back to the GHC Faculty Lounge. I'm Therese Baldwin-Obas, back with Professor Morris. So we've talked a little bit about academics, we've talked a little bit about the Wyoming trip and some things going on in the community. Now I want to turn my attention to what you do for fun. What do you do in your spare time, Billy?
Oh my, so many things. I now have 4 grandsons.
Oh, wow.
So they take up a fair
So
amount of spare time. None of them are local. The closest ones are in Marietta.
Okay.
So we get down to see them fairly often, and then another one in Athens.
Okay.
But yeah, grandkids,
All right. What are the age ranges there?
10 to 15 months.
Oh, wow. So across
4
the board.
boys. Yep, 4 boys. And there's the middle 2 are right around 1 year apart, and they're a double handful when you get them together, but so much
So
fun.
when did they get to hear from Grandpa about his favorite subject matter? I'm sure you've already taught him
absolutely.
about the rocks.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We pick up all the rock things all the time, and also bugs, and they love to play in the creek behind the house and catch salamanders. And
So you
that
think
sort of thing.
anybody will follow in your footsteps?
I don't know.
I don't know yet.
You know, my daughter, I have 3 daughters and 1 son as well, and my youngest daughter, I thought that I had her on track. She went out west with us several times, and one of the times we were working on a dinosaur dig, we got invited to participate in an excavation, and we literally had to pull her off that outcrop as the sun was going below the horizon. And so, but I went for archaeology because she said, "Pop, people are far more interesting than dinosaurs," and I
That's
couldn't
a fair,
really argue with her.
right.
Yeah. So she's done some great things in archaeology, but you know, I don't know. Just as long as they're happy, they're following their passion.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter to me.
Absolutely.
But
Anything
I do love
else?
taking them outside.
Okay, so anything else? So grandkids
Sure.
priority?
Yeah, grandkids are tops. Before grandkids, it was gardening and sailboating and hiking, backpacking, playing the guitar.
All right.
Yep.
So you had a lot of passions, Billy.
I do. There's so many things.
I love
So
it.
many things to
So
do.
let me ask you this. What's left on your bucket list to do?
Well, I sold my sailboat a couple years ago and put the money into an account for a bigger boat. I would like to get a bigger sailboat. At one time I thought I'd like to circumnavigate this planet. However, I don't know if I've got the time to do that now. That's not something you want to rush, right? It needs to be a slow boat.
Absolutely.
And I don't know if I can take my wife away from the grandsons for
Right.
that long a period
That
of
period
time.
of
So maybe
time.
we'll just cruise the Bahamas or something. I don't-
So if there were a book written about you, either by yourself or somebody who knew you well, what do you think the title of that book would be?
Hang on, there's one more thing I have to do.
I like that. One more thing I have to do. Hang
one
on.
more thing.
Very nice. Now, you've had the privilege of being in the classroom, what you said, 27 years, right?
Right.
Right,
That's
27 years. I'm not quite at 27 years. I'll be at 20
Nice.
in July. One of the things that intrigues me about students is that even though, yes, we are there to help guide them, you know, provide the wisdom that we have in our discipline, I find myself learning more from them. Do you feel the same?
I do. I do. And it takes, you have to stop and listen though.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're the only one talking, then you're probably not going to find yourself in that position
Absolutely.
of learning. And that is something that I truly value and treasure about our trip during the summer. We're outside the classroom. We have lots of time for interactions and conversations.
And that's so important,
hearing
those
from students.
interactions, that those small moments that we get to communicate and connect can really make a powerful difference. Particularly, I would say, in the field that you're in, you know, and also mine. I don't think most people would volunteer to take a public speaking course or a communication course unless they absolutely had to. And probably the same with some non-sciencey people, as we were discussing a little bit earlier. So I love the fact that you have that opportunity. So how would you describe yourself in 3 words? Or 5 or 7?
Oh, I don't know if I can come up with that many words. I would hope that patient would be a word that people might agree with. Although sometimes I am impatient because there's a lot of things I want to do. But I'm generally patient with my students. I give them samples, give them. All right, you're asking for words, not sentences. Patient. Optimistic most of the time. Energetic.
I love this.
Yep.
Okay. And I would sure your students would concur with that.
I would hope
You
so.
know? Yeah. I mean, I think students really respond to professors who are genuine, who clearly love what they do. There's a degree of competence that's necessary teaching the concepts that we teach. And so I do think your students would agree with the way you've just described yourself. So thank you for
Well,
that.
oh, of course. This is more than a word, but I have realized, not necessarily recently, but maybe in the last 5 or 10 years, that my threshold for pain or failure in the classroom is pretty high. I'm not afraid to take a risk and try something new, and if it doesn't work out, just get up and dust
Right.
off and say, okay, that didn't
Exactly.
work. What
Right.
can we do to make it better next time, or even just toss
Pull
it
it all
out?
together, yeah.
And I believe that students respond to that well too, if they
Well,
can.
and I think that it helps them be part of their own learning, and it becomes less of this power dynamic that you're the professor, they're the student. They're actively involved in how they learn, and I think that's so critical and important. And I hope that as the generations continue to go by, that they will appreciate and value that aspect in their educators. So continuing to talk about this element of education, GHC, of course, is still an access institution for many of our students, but we are adding a lot of bachelor degree programs. How important do you think that is to the longevity of the institution to be
I
able
think
to
it's
offer?
huge. I'm so happy about the 4-year programs that we've added, and in particular our newest one, which is over in our Department of
Yes.
STEM and Environmental Science and Natural Resources, or Environmental and Natural Resources. And I've had the great honor of teaching one of the initial courses in that majors program this semester. So I have 10 students in this course, and they're all EVNR majors. They are all engaged. There's no phones out in the room. They come in the room ready to talk with their assignments done, ready to work with one another. And the first week, I don't think my feet touched the floor when I left the classroom afterwards. And I was describing it to my wife. She said, "You're never going to retire, are you?" And I said, "No, probably
Well,
not."
that's the
But
thing. If you're still loving what you're doing and you still have the ability to be innovative and you have that type of student right there in front of you, that's the best gift you can get.
Yeah, and so that describes my reaction to our 4-year programs, but what it brings to our students in the community is, of great value in a bachelor's degree. And then local contacts and experiences here that they would not get
Elsewhere.
at a large institution. And in particular, the EVNR degree is going to be a huge market for job growth going forward in the future. And our students, they care about this now.
They do.
You know, 10 years ago, it was hard to get a rise out of anybody with environmental issues. I mean, there've always been people who've been concerned and responsive to this, but there's more of a more interest among a larger group of our students now than I've ever seen before, and that gives me great hope.
Absolutely.
And I'm
So
glad
you
to
mentioned you have the 10 students. Overall, how many students do you have enrolled currently?
I think they're 19 or 20 last
Okay.
count. Yep, which was, I mean, we just opened
just
the
the
program
first
in
full
January.
year, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure the word will continue to travel and you'll grow
Yep.
in that area. Are there any other types of courses that you're still hoping to teach as part of that 4-year bachelor program?
The soils course is one that I'm qualified to teach, and then there's another one in hydrology that I'm qualified to teach, which of course is a study of water, groundwater, and surface water. That one, I'm not sure when that one's going to come online. I haven't seen it projected out on the schedule yet.
And can students who are interested, or even in our high school or area, if any counselors want to get more information, where can they go?
Well, we have a web page, and I don't recall what it is, but it's easy enough to find from the Highlands
Okay.
Landing site. Just search for, environmental and natural resources. And we've got a multi-page description of the program.
All right, so definitely check out highlands.edu and do a search for that program if you have any interest or know anybody who is also interested in pursuing that pathway.
Absolutely.
In addition to that, I know that there's a lot that happens in the School of STEM, or STEAM, I should technically say. Our Cartersville campus is one of the campuses where we have the most recent and up-to-date technology in that particular building. Primarily, where do the courses take place for this new bachelor's?
In that STEAM building.
In that STEAM building,
Right.
okay.
Yep.
Any components available online?
Not
or they,
yet.
Okay, so
Not
they
yet.
do need to be physically present.
Yes, I think the
Cartersville
long-term
campus.
plan is to offer them in a hybrid format so that they would, most of the, well, I shouldn't say most, maybe half of the classes have a lab component.
Okay.
And we want to get their hands wet and dirty in those labs. So my understanding is that we will be moving towards a hybrid format where they can get the lecture content online and then come in for labs in the afternoon, evening, weekends even. We're trying to make this suited for not only our normal students, but also people who are working right now and maybe want to transition to a new career.
And are there any other types of connections that you have to the local businesses and community yet? Or is that something you plan to do as the program builds?
The our dean and now provost built this program over a number of years in consultation with folks like DNR and also environmental firms in the area, of which there are quite a few who are doing mediation and remediation and mitigation. So they had an idea of what was needed for the workforce and built a program around the needs of both public and private sectors.
So our students are fairly guaranteed, even probably before they finish the degree, to have employment, or at least options
Right, that's
for
what
employment.
Yeah, so all of those, especially with the private sector, is strongly correlated with the growth of an area. And of course, North Georgia has never had a problem
Right.
with growth. So all the building that we do and all the people that move in and all the, for lack of a better word, environmental problems or issues and concerns that are associated with that, yes, lots of room for job growth there.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier, no plans to retire because you simply enjoy what you're still doing.
Friday they told us if I were to retire, they're not going to fill my position. So
So you might as
that
well
makes it
stay.
hard. I would not want to see
Keep
the
it
program
going.
collapse just because I
Absolutely.
wanted to go sailing.
So let's say hypothetically, though, let's put it out a while, 15 years.
Oh, I won't last 50.
You know. So once retirement age does hit, whenever that might be,
Yeah.
what would we find you doing?
I have a lot of chores around the house, so we have
You got the honey-do list.
Well, yeah, I sure do, and it never ends. We have 12 acres, and we built a house on it 21 years ago. So things need to be done. But we also have orchards and gardens and a high tunnel. I love to garden and grow things, and maybe even get some animals back out there. So all the things that happen on the hobby farm. Sailing, I can't get sailing out
I
of
think,
my
yeah,
mind.
I think you
love
need to
the
go ahead and
water.
get that boat. I'm thinking
I
that's
love
part
the
of the
water,
plan.
and my wife does too. So that would be something that we would really enjoy doing.
Okay. So not quite ready to hang that hat up yet,
I'm
but
having
certainly
too much
having
fun,
those
Travis.
ambitions.
It's just having too
I
much
love
fun.
that. I love getting to interact with individuals like yourself who feel education is just that. I feel like we're blessed to be at Georgia Highlands. You alluded to some opportunities that we have that not a lot of other institutions have, the ability to be creative,
Yes.
to be innovative, to be able to meet the needs of not only the GHC community, but our counterparts as well. So the work industry fields, the other elements that are part of this process as well. Well, this has been an engaging conversation. I could talk to you for hours just about everything that we've talked about, but we do want to wrap up. I want to again thank Professor Billy Morris for sitting down with us this afternoon. If you would like more information about his Wyoming trip, you can also visit our website at highlands.edu. Thank you for watching the GHC Faculty Lounge, and we will see you next time.